Welcome, everyone, to our first live episode of the year. How are you all doing? We hope that you have enjoyed your new year, that we're getting settled. It is 2024, and we are excited to be live today because, Kristen, we have some information about the casino.
We do, yes. So exciting to be back here. It's been so long since we've had like a big casino topic to
Yeah,
discuss. And so
it's just
it's,
been like judges rulings or so and so filing this lawsuit or that or this
yeah,
anti-casino group doing this or that, but like this is actual movement, I think, like a way forward that's
yeah,
been speculated
slowly
for a
but
while.
surely.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has kind of been what everybody's been waiting on,
Yeah.
whether they knew it or not, was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the discerning what exactly the next steps were going to be because it has been very unclear, like based on the court rulings and just where everything has landed. Like it's all been kind of unclear. And so today there was a lot of information cleared up on that. And so we're just doing this live because, like, by the time, if we record it and then it comes out like the next day,
Right.
we just want to go ahead and get out here. So I know noon isn't always the like best time, 12:30 ish. The ish is implied when we put a time out. The ish is
From here
implied.
on out, if there is a time, it is always ish.
Yes,
Yes.
that's just implied.
Hard stop.
Yeah, but I do appreciate so many people joining. If there are questions, drop them in the chat.
Yes, we are monitoring comments. We will respond
We'll do our best to, yeah.
as we get to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's break down what happened today,
Yeah.
Nathan. All right. So the Racing Commission met. It was a little under 30-minute meeting. If you take off the kind of chit chat before and after, it's about 20 minutes altogether. You can go watch it. Mike goat said ish. Yes, exactly. He gets us. Mike sees us. But so they met. They had a new attorney there to advise them because their previous attorney, who is still involved, but is just kind of taking a step back from this part of the process. They said because he does have like a conflict of interest. They didn't really go into details about what that is, but attorneys end up with that stuff all the time. Anyway, though, I was really like impressed with this woman that came in and how thorough she was at explaining things. Bless her heart, there were a couple of minutes that were funny. Um, but I'll talk about those later. But let me start with telling you guys just sort of the basic rundown of what happened here. So, like, she said basically there is no valid casino license and there are no applications currently in front of the Racing Commission for consideration. There are no valid licenses and there are no valid applications right now. There was a packet that the Racing Commission had that had a bunch of different information in it, including some letters from both sides, from attorneys from both sides. And the consensus on that was that there definitely is going to need to be a new application period. Like that was clear. And so so they talked about, then really the meat of this meeting was that they need to talk about how the rules should be laid out for the application, the next application process. And all of that, she repeated several times, is to try to fix all of these different rules
Right.
to avoid further litigation.
Yeah, she said several times we want to decrease the amount of litigation or the potential for litigation. I was very impressed with that, and also like very impressed with her and her explanations. Like there, a lot of times you talk to lawyers and it's a lot of legal jargon, and she was very thorough in her explanations of why and how, and it was good to watch.
Yeah, for sure. It was
Mhm.
the sound wasn't great, but you could kind of get the gist of all of it. I did get a copy from the Racing Commission of the packets
Mhm.
that the commissioners had in front of them, and we'll be posting those later so people can read these like suggested rule changes for themselves. You don't
Yeah.
always like to do that. Just put it out there. Like you don't have to take our word for anything. Like
Right. Right.
just read it
Yeah.
for yourself and make an informed decision. But I want to talk a little bit today about.
Wait, does that paperwork that they send have like the suggested changes in it? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like how any kind of legislation is written. Is there is like underlined if it's suggested added language,
Right.
and it's stricken through if it's suggested removing that language. So that's how you kind of tell the difference in what you're looking at there. But we'll highlight some of it too because it's all just black and white. It's a lot of language, but so I'll go through and highlight that before we post it, because I'm nice like that. But also, the So the things I want to talk about today on this is the kind of the rule process that is going to be coming up for this, and talk a little bit about just kind of the timeline and what all this means now. Because one of the racing commissioners put it very succinctly, like basically they're just wiping the slate
Right.
clean,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
And I think the attorney agreed. I think that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Except now with the slate clean, they're kind of tightening it all up before they
Right.
start
They
again.
need to have a clear, this is because before it was almost like everything just fell into place and they didn't have the expectation of
Mhm.
this, of being in this situation. So every other situation fell into place really quickly and easily. And this one area of Polk County where they're wanting to put the last casino of the four, has really caused a lot of trouble. And so they want to kind of clarify and shrink down all of the things that might get in the way of that.
Right. And one thing I hope people will take away from this is that even though this is slow, like it slows things down, it's a slog, like this is part of like good government, right? Is
Hmm.
like the legislative body, or the administrative body in this case, the administrative branch made up rules that were allowed under the legislation. Um, but then the court is tasked with the balance of power of interpreting those rules and making sure they align with our state constitution,
Right.
with other laws. And so, like, even though this has been long and messy, this is part of how it happens,
Yeah.
is that the courts come back and go, no, these rules, because they're not written by judges, they're written
Right.
by people who are appointed to these commissions and then have public comment. Anyone can propose a rule change,
Right.
right? It has to go through the whole process. But
Yes.
like any person, you don't have to be somebody special. Anybody can propose rule change, and the commission has to either, you know, move forward with it or deny the request, right?
Yeah.
So that's how, sometimes things like this happen. We see it in the language of the amendment. People
Hmm.
put in words that then later everybody has to go like, wait, what is the meaning of
What
the
is,
word "the"?
yeah.
um,
Hmm.
and the courts have to determine that. But the other thing about this that I think is really great is there's going to become a point in this process where there's an opportunity for public feedback
Yeah.
on these rules and public comment. And that is really like the appropriate place for that to happen, right? On like how this casino vendor gets vetted and decided is really like a lot of that needs to be laid out in the rule process. Some of it already is, some of that's not changing,
Yeah.
but
As
it's
far
not.
as like the letters,
Right.
the,
Yeah, none of that's
reviews over.
changing.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about what is changing, but the point here is that there's an appropriate way for things to be changed, and like for people to come through and go like, okay, there was a problem with this process and we should make adjustments based on the feedback of the courts, the feedback of the public,
Right.
and implement these rules. Not a few elected people
Behind the scenes
decide that
making
they
a
didn't like
decision.
how it was done
Yeah. Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
and they just want to do it differently this
Yeah.
time because they weren't in office then,
Right.
and so we're going to try to hijack it. Like that's not the
Right.
process
Yeah.
that the
Or
public.
as they're leaving office,
Right, that's
they,
not the
yeah.
process that the public should be dealing with here.
Right.
So my point is that it is good to see this happening, even though it's slow. Some of the big rules that changed. Let me get into these. The biggest thing, the most important thing that they were covering is changes to how the application process can be opened, because there was all this back and forth before about like they reopened a special
Right.
application period for good cause shown, right? Like that
Mhm.
was a big phrase we heard a lot of,
Yeah.
good cause shown. They're striking that language. That these are proposed.
Yeah.
These changes have not happened,
Right.
and we'll talk
They're
about
gonna review these
what the process
changes
is.
and then
Yes.
next week make a decision. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but these are the proposed changes, and like I said, we'll have these on our Facebook page for folks to look at. But it also talks about how they can open a application period if no casino application is chosen.
Yeah.
Like if they receive applications and they determine
Nobody
that
picks
that
one,
no
yeah.
one gets the license,
Mhm.
they can reopen another period. Like
Mhm.
so, it just really opened up some different options for how they can handle that. It also addressed what could happen if a casino vendor forfeited their license or wasn't renewed. Like these are questions we've heard in our community quite a
Yeah.
bit, and I think this is a lot to do with public feedback and the
Yeah.
public input, because this wasn't something laid out necessarily by the courts, but it is an issue with the rules that there's been a lot of public discourse around of
Yeah.
like, what happens if in 10 years their license isn't renewed?
Right.
What, you know what I mean? And so they talked about in that, like the process for reopening an application period for being able to issue a new license in the case that someone's not is for any reason, the
Mhm.
license is no longer being held active by a vendor.
Yeah.
So they really got into that in here a little bit. And then there was a little bit of language around background checks and shareholders being added. There's been some debate over if members of Cherokee Nation Entertainment and Cherokee Nation Business and like Legends, if those
Right.
are all the same people.
Yeah.
This isn't necessarily getting into all of that, but it does go into them being able to do background checks on shareholders, which is important, and is probably a result of issues that have come up with license holders around medical marijuana casino or
Mhm.
dispensaries.
Yeah.
So it has probably less to do with the casino and more with other issues that the state has experienced around that. Let's see. There goes into some stuff like I just said about denial of a casino application, um, and the process for appealing that.
Yeah.
There were like when this had been made initially, there were like 16 different
Right.
processes
There
for like
was a lot of
appealing
different,
different
yeah.
sort of things. So
Mhm.
they really just cleaned up the language to align the processes for appealing a decision by the commission. And yeah, I think that was most of. I mean, they came down to really just the biggest thing was like you really need to promulgate amended rules for the casino application
Right.
process, and here are our suggested rules. So the racing commissioner said, we need some time to read over this. They
Mhm.
had just received it right before the meeting. They didn't get it in advance. So they need some time to read over it, and then they're going to come back next week, and that's on
Tuesday at 11 a.m.
10:30.
or 10:30.
Yep, on January 30th at 10:30 a.m. They'll be back. Um, so any questions on like the rules process before I want to talk a little bit about like how the rules process will play out for people so they know what to expect.
Yeah.
Any like questions on the actual rules?
I think, like, how do they make the decision when it comes to, like, you have these commission members and they, I'm sure, have their own thoughts and processes as to like what they want to happen. You've got the pressure from the governor's office to like get this done. You've got the pressure from our community and the anti-pressure from our community. Like, at some level, like, not everybody's going to walk away from this situation happy. Um, and my concern is that through this process, we will end up with a lesser quality candidate than what, like, we're going to have the casino. Like, yes, we've been through all the
Mhm.
litigation, we've been
Mhm.
through all the things, but like, I don't want, like, the whole reason that the opposition started was because it was, they're just going to put a metal building with slot machines. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't want that to happen. And I would say that much of the rest of the community doesn't want that to happen, regardless if you're for or against.
Mhm.
And so, like, my question is, how are they going to keep that from happening in this situation?
Well, there is some language and rules here about like ability for someone to transfer a license or change locations. So there's a little bit in here about like that the commission has to have approval over and again some of this I think stems from issues with medical marijuana
Yeah.
licenses, where people got licenses and then sold them, and there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of oversight. So there's protection around some of that, right? Which was some concern
Right.
that people expressed at one point. What if they get it and they just sell it
Right.
to somebody else?
Or hold on to it and never use it.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I think we all have flashbacks to
Yeah.
the Dry County, like
Yeah.
super Dry County
Yep.
days. Yeah.
Yep.
But yes. So I think some of the protection for that is already in place under Amendment 100,
Mhm.
right? With the letter
The letter of applicant.
of
Yeah.
support
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
the county judge, from elected officials. And I think we're going to see the push to get those letters of support really ramp up over the next few months. I think we're going to see that. I think that's going to happen again.
Even though they've already been ones written.
Right. But that doesn't mean they couldn't
Yeah.
still vie for another one. And it's
Yeah.
worth it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of money at stake. I think you will see, similar to kind of the first round where we had several, remember that year that like that summer where like, man, every like local festival was sponsored by like 5 different casinos.
Right.
Like Hard Rock was
Yes.
sponsoring
And
everything.
every
And like,
elected official was meeting with
yeah,
one or another group. Like it was insane.
I think that I think we will experience some more of that. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's going to come back around. We've already seen it start up anyway at the
Hmm.
quorum court meetings. I think we'll probably see that escalate a little bit. It's not going to happen really quickly. They're not going to be opening up a new application process or application period like tomorrow.
Yeah, that's
That's
another thing I'd
definitely going to
like
be
you
a
to talk
ways
about, like
off.
the time frame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to.
Hmm.
But I do think that's a good question. So, I mean, there are things in place. And again, they'll have the same sort of process or a structured process. There may be changes to it. We see, the rules can be changed, but they'll have a similar structured process of like determining who the best applicant is
Yeah.
based on, qualified applicants that bring a letter of support to the table.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
So,
So
I
the
still,
letter of support is really kind of like the avenue of like this has been selected by this community. There's been a review process, whichever, for the,
Mhm.
the quorum court, the county judge, okay, that makes sense.
Right. And I still feel very strongly, I believe very firmly that we're gonna end up with legends. Like I
Yes.
think that
Same.
I don't, we've always said don't see Judge Cross changing his
Changing.
mind or
Yeah.
waffling on this. He's very like steadfast in his support. But I know that we have heard some names of new people
Right.
showing interest that
Yeah.
hadn't been around before.
Yeah.
So, who knows what could happen? It is still up in the air. It is still kind of unknown. But I want to talk about now, while we can, the process, the timeline, what to expect. And then I want to talk a little bit about, nobody's asked yet, but at the end here, I want to talk about the potential ballot initiative removing Pope County casino license from Amendment 100
Yeah.
that has been filed, that they're trying to get up and running again, and
Right.
how this plays into that. Okay, for the rulemaking process. Now, this is what's going to get long. Best case scenario, you're looking at 3 or 4 months, probably looking at more like 6 months, maybe even a little longer. But I think you'll see a lot of push to try to get this done before the November election. Just a hunch. I don't have any inside information, just based on my understanding of.
I mean,
of
they could come
politics
back
and how
next week and just be like, all right, these are the rules.
No, they can't.
No?
No, they can't.
Okay.
That's the thing.
All right.
And this is a good part of our government. So to do the rules, they will have to first, like, they have to publish them. They have to send them to the Bureau of Legislative Research, do their
Oh, yeah.
review. The
Yeah.
governor's
Okay.
office will do a review on them. Then there will be a 30-day public comment period that the public can give feedback. Then they'll go to the Legislative Council, to ALC, where they review rules. Like that's
Yep.
legislators,
Yep.
Arkansas legislators who are on that committee that review rules. That only happens once a month. And so it has to be through the 30-day comment period in time to be on the agenda by the 15th. So it kind of depends
Yeah.
on
When
how that
it
falls.
happens. Yeah.
And then after ALC, there has to be a 10-day window before they go into effect. And then there has to be the publication of public notice of the application period. So
And it's 30 days after that.
right. So
yeah.
we're definitely looking at
Yeah.
a drawn out process here. Like this is not going to be quick.
Yeah, the lawyer said I think 60 to 120 days for that process. Like, so 4 to 6 months is not a stretch.
Right. Oh yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. And we'll have a fiscal session happening. Primary elections are happening. There's a lot happening in this first quarter.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think you'll see a delay. Are you taking a look at questions?
Yeah. Chris Hausnick says here, any word on the rubric and or criteria for scoring the applicants?
I have not seen anything on that. I believe that will be part of the required like publication. It is partially clarified in here of like what the public notice requires.
Yeah.
So I think we will see that once they actually get to the point of opening up an application period. But I haven't seen anything, or there's nothing in this packet showing any
Right.
changes to that process, really.
Yeah. Mike
Um,
said something. He said very similar. He's like, they didn't publish the grading methods,
mhm.
but the rules do require some form of.
That's my understanding,
Mhm,
yes.
yeah.
And again, I'm a layperson, kind of going off first reading of this, but it is it appears that they get into that with the public notice
Yeah.
aspect of the rules. Now, so like I said, timeline's going to be a little while on this. But the thing I know it's frustrating. I know the delay's frustrating, but to me, so much of this is like the painful process of creating government oversight from the people, right? Like
Yeah.
when we have not had it, it's hard to get it back. Like when people
Right.
have operated behind the scenes, they haven't really had public scrutiny. There
Yeah.
hasn't been the courts and the public involved in accountability like there have been with this issue. Like even though it's rough and it's painful and it's everybody hates it. Also though at the end of it, you see people come out like at better standards
Yeah.
of operating within government. And that was one of the things I thought was so funny about watching this meeting is bless this attorney's heart. Bless the attorney sometimes because that she started out at the very beginning being like, okay, listen, when people reach out to y'all to communicate about this, please just refer them to Smokey Campbell, the manager for the Racing Commission. Do not have these conversations because we don't want you to end up having to recuse yourself for any reason. Like
Right.
we do not want you to end up with a conflict. And that's happened previously. So like she's really trying to tell them like, please, please don't put yourself in a bad position here because then we lose you in this and it becomes
Right.
even more complicated. Your voice, you're an important part of this process. Please don't mess it up. And so before they closed, the chair was like, "Oh yeah, well, I've been at the races with this, and I've been." And he just starts telling all
I
these
was like,
stories.
what? Well, and like they were talking about not having the meeting at Oaklawn, so that there wasn't any.
Oh my god, he just started like going off and like saying all this stuff, and I was just like, I could see her like a little bit of the side of her face, and she was just like she looked so. And then he was like, "But I guess I'm supposed to send all them to smoke," And she's like, "Yes, yes, yes."
Yeah.
So that part was funny. Like they are trying to make them not end up recused or with additional lawsuits. And I put in my notes, in spite of themselves.
In spite of themselves. Yeah.
Because they do not make it easy. But it is part of this thing that you see of this, like, people who've been, and no offense to these guys that are racing commissioners, but a lot of them have been around the good old boy system for a long time. Right. And they're used to not having this level of public scrutiny.
I make a decision and it happens.
And nobody's really
and
watching that closely.
Nobody cares what I think,
mean?
but I'm going to do what I see fit. Yeah.
And so, like, even though it's uncomfortable for them, I think it's just such an important part of good government of like that when people have eyes on it, they do better. Like,
well, and we see that all across the board in a lot of areas.
Mhm.
I know that Miss Joyce Elliott can kind of get frustrated when we talk about generations here, but like, and this is not any shade to either generation.
Well, I don't think she really watches
but
this.
No, she doesn't. But she's not.
She talks to me about
she's way
respecting intergenerational power.
But there is a changeover in generational power, like right now, and we're seeing a lot of the things come to head in those situations, and there's like our generation and younger are very like, we want to see how the sausage is made, you know?
Well, and we're used to the idea of everybody being able to, like, people watching us on
online.
Camera, that everything's online, that your emails can be viewed, your texts can be viewed. Like, we're so much more used to that kind of technology.
Right.
So, yeah, I definitely see the generational issue. Okay, last thing I want to talk about, because I know people are, like, tuning in on their lunch break and stuff, and I appreciate so many people being on here to watch.
It's amazing.
Like, it's so great. I want to talk about the ballot initiative just a little bit. I'm surprised nobody asked. I put it in my notes because I figured somebody would be like, what does this mean?
They're not as cool nerds as we are.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very
political
very,
nerds. They're not as
fair.
politically nerdy as we are.
Nobody's as big of a dork about this.
Except maybe Chris Hausnick.
Yeah. and Mike Goat has some serious casino.
Yeah.
But okay. So, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. The local group has filed a ballot question committee.
Yes.
Aiming to, once again, do petition, try to get an issue on the ballot to remove Polk County from the Constitution, for the
Yeah.
state Constitution, Amendment 100. Now they've only filed the ballot question committee. Haven't seen any language
Right.
filed or any like titles approved.
And at
or
this
anything
point,
like
I
that.
haven't seen any financials because
I didn't check it in the last couple of days, so I don't hold me to that. But yeah, I hadn't seen any.
Right.
That's my
Yeah,
look.
we haven't seen. Them.
But then the somebody has that was a fun question. Okay, so they so part of this is like, well, what happens then? What if in my mind it's like, what happens if the license gets issued and then they get to the ballot? Like how does that play?
Like, dude, what if it's selected before the election and then we all have this and then oh no, now there's this ballot initiative like that the people are voting on.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's a very like
And again,
interesting scenario. Thanks for bringing that up and jinxing the whole process.
Well,
Kristen.
that was the thing I thought about. And so now again, I am not a lawyer. I'm a layperson. I've just been all up in this. But in my opinion, based on the reading, one of the things I heard them mention and the things I saw in the rules is around if a court were to revoke the license, or for other reasons. And so I do believe that still leaves us open to the idea that they could run an amendment and revoke.
Post facto, like after the fact. Because that would just mean that we were going to have constant challenges.
I don't
to this
know. I know.
in every election season.
That they could just keep doing it.
Yeah, just like
I know
they could be in existence for 10 years and just like,
still
no,
be,
we don't want
like,
them here anymore.
every year running petitions. Yeah. Until nobody gives them any money. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the thing. But I don't see, like, I haven't seen anything. Now I'm going to ask, I'm going to get more information. So if I'm wrong about that, I'll definitely come back and clarify. But just from what I've seen, I don't think this is any way that, I don't think this today is anything that's going to slow them down or stop them.
I can see maybe when it comes to like renewal of license, because like those are like, if you look at it as like your ABC alcohol license, like once you get your license, it takes a lot to get it taken away, like you serving underage people or like breaking the law. But like the city can't just come in and like take away your license.
No, but voters could vote for a dry county,
right?
And you would lose your license.
Yes, but that's after the fact, like after the time frame, the specific time frames are.
I mean, it's the same thing in my mind. Like if you have a liquor store, say you have a liquor store in Blackwell, and that county Conway County decides they want to go dry.
Yeah, I guess there's not any like specific
I don't think they're like
frame.
grandfathered into that to where they'd still be able to retain it. I don't think it works.
I mean, we do a lot of grandfathering for other things.
I don't think that's one of them. I could be wrong though. I could be wrong. I'm definitely going to have to do some more research. So we'll be coming back with this, but to me, it was an interesting question. I do want to talk about Chris Connolly's question. Did you see it?
Yeah, he says, would the casino bring in more entertainment like big bands like U2? Listen, if Bono shows up in Russellville, that's probably Bono or Taylor Swift. It's probably the only like I'm not a huge U2 fan. I'm a Bono fan.
There's a lot of people that I would like to hold their breath waiting for Taylor Swift to come here.
Dude, if Taylor Swift came here, I'm a Swiftie.
Don't hold your breath.
My 4-year-old
don't hold your breath
is
for
like,
it.
Dad, I'm a Swiftie.
But there's a few people that I would say should.
Dude,
just because
it's awesome. Did you bring Travis Kelce? That's like bonus.
Calm down. Calm down, Nathan. I do think though that we would see bigger, bigger acts. U2, Taylor Swift.
I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who are like, U2's not that big.
I would say look towards more of what you see in like Oklahoma,
right?
Yes. And I don't even know. Like a lot of them are country music.
They have a lot of kind of not first tier large acts, but
they're like people who are really big in like 90s, early 2000s,
or even like people that you would see like on a tour with a huge band, but like they play right before that huge band, right? So
or it can be like Bret Michaels, you know what I mean?
No,
no, I'm saying not like before the band, but I'm saying like smaller acts like that.
Yeah.
Now I do think that I didn't read it like that. Sorry, I was thinking something else.
Get something from Bret Michaels' lawyer.
Yeah, like ma'am. No, I doubt they care about us. But I think that
semi burned out comedians.
Yes,
Liz,
I definitely.
I don't know. We might,
Look.
Don't get me started on.
We're not having Matt Rife here.
Yeah, no, that's what I was. Comedians that have put their foot in their mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, lots going on. It does sort of reset things, but I think it's going to reset things to the process we should have had before.
Yeah,
Right.
like we've went through all of this pain and suffering just to start back at the beginning,
Mhm.
but now we're at the beginning of where we should have been in the first place.
Right.
And I agree with that. It does suck that we've had to go through, especially for people who have wanted the casino from the beginning.
Mhm.
Like we're just waiting for so many different things that also could come attached to a
Mhm.
casino, from an entertainment standpoint, even from just like regular business growth
Do you
standpoint.
do you want to hear one of the things I'm excited about that probably no one would expect me to be excited about?
Yeah,
So, this is a newer thing
I'm
for me, a
interested.
new hobby.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
so in Arkansas,
They're like
you can't do
geocaching.
you can't
for
do
alcohol.
sports betting geocaching for alcohol. Sports betting, because I've been sports betting.
You've been sportsing?
I've been
Yeah,
sports balling.
Okay.
And not just on looks, like on stats. So in Arkansas, like if you try to go on DraftKings and like bet on games, you can't do it. You have
Right.
to use like the Saracen app,
Bet Saracen,
right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Because they have to have a physical presence in Arkansas for you to be
Yes.
able to bet on games.
Not yet a friend of the pod. So
No.
yeah.
But so once hopefully Legends has a license and a physical presence, they'll be able to open up a new avenue for sports betting
Yes.
online in Arkansas.
And you could bet on how many times Taylor Swift's face is shown in the Super Bowl.
Is that a thing? I would bet on that.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I need some stats. I do operate on the stats.
Okay, are you like
Um,
fantasy betting? Like you're
I do-
following
I'm-
statistics for sports?
I'm doing Prize Picks. I'm doing so if anybody needs a Prize Picks code, hit me up. I'll share my code with you. Yeah.
I have to say, I absolutely abhor the Bet Saracen commercials. No offense
God,
to
I abhor the
folks
app. The
there,
app
but
is
the
not
commercials
great.
are terrible. Like,
Yeah. So, anywho, Legends, please do a more user-friendly interface for your sports betting when you get to that, if hopefully you do. All right, so that's all I've got on this. I think we're pretty much done for today.
yeah. Listen, we
We
are.
do have some other topics.
There's
I
a lot
know
next week. We're going to talk about,
Yes.
all
Listen.
of the things that you're frustrated about your trash.
everyone in
um,
Russellville is mad about their trash.
We are working on it. The city, I mean, not Kristen and me. You don't have to tag Kristen
You
in your
can.
posts
I don't
about
mind.
waste management.
I think it's funny. I mean, I don't think it's funny that it's an issue. It's a serious thing people have to
Yes.
deal with. It's a nightmare.
She
but
thinks it's funny that people tag her.
like I'm an elected
Yeah.
official. Like I can do anything.
You can. They believe in you,
I can
and they should
help
because
bring
you,
public awareness.
you
and,
have done a lot,
and I
for
will
this
chew
community.
your ass
Yes.
if you don't take care of things.
And have been ever since that whole thing started.
I'm
But
gonna
yeah,
chew
like
your
there's
ass for a
also
little
like the youth council that we talked about with the city. Like I really think that's a great
lots
thing.
of things going on. Yeah, so
Yes.
lots of other topics that we kind of wanted to talk about today, but they're all going to still be sitting here next
Right.
week. That nothing urgent, so we just kind of wanted to jump on here and do this.
Yeah. So stay tuned for all the fun and local good or bad stuff going around politically in the River Valley. And we will see you all next week.